Jack here, owner of Hockey Alley. I'm here at part two with legend Hall of Famer Bob Miller. And the next thing that was the most famous game was the Miracle on Manchester game in 1982. What was the most biggest turning point of that game that you recall?
Well, just a little bit of background there. It was a playoff series, a best 3 out of 5, and the Kings won the first game in Edmonton 10-8. And you always hear about, the playoffs, tight checking, low scoring hockey. And that was 10-8. The Kings won it. And then the Oilers won the next game. Then it came back to Los Angeles for the first game in LA. And everybody was excited because the series was tied at 1-1. And in the first 2 periods of that Miracle on Manchester game, that was what it was called later, the Oilers had a 5-0 lead. And I was just so livid about, we get everybody excited about Kings hockey, and then we go right into the dumpster, and we're down 5-0 at the end of 2 periods. And but in the third period, you think, well, okay, just break the shutout or something, and do something to give you momentum headed for the next game. But the Kings get 5 goals in the third period, the last one with 5 seconds left in regulation to tie the game. And then the Kings win it in overtime. And I think, in my opinion, the turning point, one of them, in that third period was a high sticking penalty that cut above the eyebrow of Dave Lewis. And so with the penalties, the Kings wound up with a 3-minute major power play on that. And the story goes that Dave Lewis is in the dressing room getting his eyebrows stitched up when the Kings scored with 5 seconds to go.
Wow. And
the doctor is putting a stitch in. And when the Kings scored, the doctor goes, yeah, and pulls up on the stitch.
Oh.
And I guess Dave Lewis saying, Doc, geez, you're jumping around with the needle in your hand while you're stitching my eye or my eyebrow. And of course, I wasn't in there to see that, but that's what I heard. And the other one, and I don't think a lot of people talk about this, with 10 seconds to go in regulation and the Kings losing, Wayne Gretzky has the puck in the Oilers zone, and all he has to do is clear it to center ice, and the game is going to be over. And Jimmy Fox, for the Kings, steps in front of Gretzky, takes the puck away from him, passes it up to Mark Hardy. Hardy gets a shot. Grant Fuhr, the goaltender for the Oilers, makes the save, and the rebound goes right in front to Steve Bozek, and he scores and ties the game. Wow. But if Fox doesn't make that play to get possession of the puck, the Kings never tie the game.
Yes.
Another turning point was in overtime, and the crowd just going crazy during the intermission. The Zambonis going around resurfacing the ice, and the crowd is just going crazy. And about a minute or so into overtime, Mario Lessard, the King goalie, slides out of the net and is way out of position. And Mark Messier has the puck, and I think, no, the net is wide open. Messier is going to win the game for the Oilers after the Kings had this great comeback. And Messier shoots it up over the net and doesn't score. And minutes later, the Kings go down on a face-off in the Oilers zone, and all rookies on the line win the face-off, and Darrell Evans fires a laser shot over Grant Fuhr's right shoulder into the net to win the game. Wow. And bedlam on the ice. It was unbelievable. And then the next night, the Oilers win, so the series is tied 2-2 with the final game coming up the next night So we're in Los Angeles, and the final game is going to be the next night in Edmonton. And what happened was both teams, the Kings and the Oilers, flew on the same plane back to Edmonton because they couldn't find another charter. So they had to get all kinds of insurance waivers for two teams to fly on the same plane.
Wow.
As I understand, when we got to the airport, the Oilers are in the waiting room and the Kings are there. And the Oilers got on the plane first. They sat in the back. The Kings sat in the front. And the referees sat in the middle. and when we got near Edmonton, it was so foggy. I had a window seat. I couldn't see the tip of the wing from my seat. And I found out later, the control tower is saying, we recommend you land in Calgary. And the pilot said, we can't. There's a game, the deciding game is in Edmonton tonight. We've got to land in Edmonton. And supposedly they told him, well, you're on your own because, it is so foggy, you can hardly see anything. And I guess the pilot told somebody in the cockpit, anybody who sees runway lights, let me know. And I'm setting this thing down.
Wow.
And we landed so hard in Edmonton, bang, on the runway, a bolt above my head broke out of a panel.
Ooh.
And somebody said, did we land or were we shot down? And then we got to the hotel at 5 a.m. with the deciding game that night. Man. And we walked in the lobby, and an elderly woman was vacuuming the lobby, and she was shaking her fist at the Kings players. She said, you didn't treat my boys very nice in L.A. And Mark Hardy said, lady, it's 5 a.m. Go home and go to bed. And the amazing thing was, that night, the Kings beat the Oilers on the Oilers' home ice 7-4 to win the series.
Wow.
And just amazing,
That is.
So that was quite a series, and things you remember forever about that game. Yeah. And a great victory for the Kings.
Definitely. That was amazing for sure. Anything funny happened on the road over the years that you could recall with players pulling shenanigans or anything like that?
Yeah, one I remember, we used to have training camp in Victoria, British Columbia. So the Kings would go up there and stay for about 2.5, 3 weeks even. Training camp was a lot longer then. Yes. And be in Victoria, British Columbia. And outside the rink in Victoria, there was a track where you could run, but it wasn't a really nice track. It was just kind of cut out of some area of vacant lot, and there was a big drop off at one end. And the Kings had a player named Randy Rhoda, and Randy Rhoda was a rookie, and he was about the same size as Rogie Vachon. And the Kings also had a player named Don Kozak, who prided himself in the off season of being in spectacular shape. He would run on the beach, and he'd have his wife ride a horse down in Palos Verdes, and he'd run behind the horse, and he was bragging about what great shape he was in and how Rogie never did any exercise. And Rogie said, well, I'll bet you I can beat you in a race around the track outside the arena. So they put the money up. I don't know, it wasn't much, I guess, but put the money up. But what Kozak didn't know, they told Randy Rhoda, we're going to dress you and Rogie with the same clothes. And Rogie is going to start out really fast. And he's going to get so far ahead of Kozak that when he comes to this area, there's a dip. If you go off the track, there's kind of a dip. You can hide behind it. He's going to go down that dip and hide. And Randy, you get up and run on the track. So and of course Randy's fresh, and he's widening the gap between Kozak can't believe I'm in fantastic shape, and I can't catch Rogie, and and they'd come around again, and Randy Rhoda would go off the track, and Rogie get back up, and Rogie wins the race, and Kozak is devastated. He can't believe he got beat by Rogie Vachon, and all the players went along with it. Oh, Rogie beat you, Cozy. You're not in as good shape as you thought. And finally, I guess they had to tell him that we dressed Randy Rhoda to look like Rogie, and they kept switching time to run. So I think that was about the funniest. Nobody got hurt except the feelings of Don Kozak.
That's funny.
But yeah. So, yeah. But there'd be some pranks, like on the plane. If you went to sleep, somebody cut the player's tie off and leave a little tag of the tie hanging down. If a player went to sleep and didn't have his shoes on, they'd take one shoe and hide it, and we'd land. And of course, the player couldn't find the other shoe, so he had to get off the plane with one shoe on and in his stocking feet. So they did some of that. Put shaving cream on their head, and then or their underneath their nose, and then tickle them, and then slap it. It's shaving cream all over, and pranks like that. And you don't see that much anymore on the charters. I think several reasons. Maybe they're all making too much money now to jeopardize their career. I don't want any suspension or any fine here. So I don't see those things that we saw earlier on the road. As far as funny incidents, they may still happen, but I wouldn't be aware of them.
Not as often. Did you mentioned something to me about Butch Goring, and was it Mike Murphy? You were telling me a story about that where there was a TV show.
Yeah, Channel 4 in L.A. When Bryant Gumbel was on the sports staff at Channel 4, they had a feature called Fantasy 4. and you could write in and say, I'd love to be the guy who makes the baselines at Dodger Stadium, and then they take a film crew out or tape it, and they tape you putting down the baselines and the batter's box and everything. And one kid wrote in, I want to be the Kings goaltender. And so they dressed him all up in goalie gear, and they had Mike Murphy and Butch Goring going to shoot at him. And Brian Gumbel interviewed the players, and they were going to take it easy. But the kid standing there who was going to 10 goal, Brian asked Butch Goring, Butch, what is your strategy going to be when you shoot at this young kid? And Goring said, I'm going to aim for his throat. And I think the kid almost fainted. He was leaning against the boards, and of course Butch was kidding. They were going to take it easy, but but the kid didn't know he was kidding, and he thought, "Oh my God, I'm in trouble here." But that was a funny incident right there.
You told me that the other day. I was laughing. I said, I was laughing today. I was passing pucks to kids. What are you laughing? I said, well, Butch Goring's going to aim at the kid's throat as this happened and so. And the kid actually held his throat. He's like, this is funny. He's an 11-year-old. And so what was the best line that you commented on, like announced when they were playing? Your favorite?
Well, I think there were two. I was always amazed by the French Connection line in Buffalo with Gilles Perreault and Richard Martin and René Robert. They were fantastic to watch. I said Perreault stick handling up the ice sounded like a typewriter. just tick, 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 tick. And they were great. And Richard Martin was a great goal scorer. And so they were a great line to watch. And later with the Kings, the Triple Crown line with Dion,
Yes.
Taylor, and Simmer, they were the highest scoring line in the league for 1 year. And I said almost every time they came up the ice, you would bet anything you had that they were going to score a goal. And they all fit perfectly on that line. Dion was the great goal scorer.
Yes.
Dave Taylor would work in the corners, and Charlie Simmer would get in front of the net and deflect pucks into the net. So they all knew their role, and you could hardly stop them. I think in 1 year, 3 of them all had over 50 goals.
That's
and
amazing.
in those years, the scoring was a lot more than it is now. I don't think the goaltending was as good as it is now, and the offense was they were scoring 5-6 goals a game. Coaches hate that, but fans love it.
Yes.
They want to see scoring, and so that line, the Triple Crown line, was great, and the French Connection line. And I love those names when they named the lines.
Yes.
It was really distinctive to certain teams, and we've gotten away from that now.
Yes.
In the game.
Yeah, it's a shame. I agree. That was you knew them by the line right away. You knew what players were on it. It's awesome.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. What was the greatest goal you ever called?
Well, I think there were 2 really, and both of them with the Kings. The night when Wayne Gretzky passed Gordie Howe to become the greatest point scorer in the history of the game. We knew he was going to do it. He was only 6 points away from doing it when the season started. So we were looking, where is it going to happen? And Gordie Howe was following the team around so he could be there. And it so happened, and I don't know whether this just is the luck of the draw or it's the way Wayne Gretzky's career went. It happened in Edmonton, of all places, where he had so many tremendous games and Stanley Cup wins, and he needed one point to pass Gordie Howe.
Yes.
And so Nick Nixon was my partner on TV at that time, and I said, Nick, every time that Wayne is on the ice, just point toward the ice, and when he's off the ice, point the other way, so that he didn't sneak onto the ice and I didn't see him, and maybe he got an assist to become the greatest scorer, and I wasn't aware that he'd made the change, because sometimes that can happen.
Yes.
Jump on behind the play, and I'm following the puck, and you don't see the player jump on. So the whole game, Nick's pointing when Gretzky's on the ice, and I'd say, Wayne Gretzky is on the ice. And people later told me, that was great the way you did that, because you said he's on the ice and we're all on the edge of our chair. Now you say Wayne's off the ice, and we'd relax a little bit. So they didn't know I was doing it more for me than for them. But so it goes to 53 seconds left to go in the game, and Wayne hasn't had that point to pass Gordie Howe. And a face-off in the Oilers zone. The Kings win the draw. The Oilers winning the game at that point.
Yes.
And the puck is held in by Steve Duchesne at the blue line, knocks it down, passes down toward the right side of the net to Dave Taylor. Taylor tips it across to the left side to Gretzky, and the net is wide open, and Gretzky scores. And, just sets the record, and they stop the game for a ceremony for about 10 minutes.
Yes.
Gordie Howe makes a speech. Wayne makes a speech. John Ziegler, the president of the league at that point, makes a speech. And then they start the game again for the overtime. And as I said, Wayne's career just happened this way. In the overtime, Wayne Gretzky gets the game-winning goal.
That's
So he not only ties the game and becomes the greatest scorer in the history of the game, wins the game in overtime. And and somebody told me during the summer, they called me and said, "What are you going to say when that happens?" I said, "Well, I'm going to describe it and hope I get it right, because I'll probably hear it the rest of my life." And he said, "Well, aren't you going to say something else, like a little extra capper after the goal?" And I thought, gee, maybe I should do something. So I was sitting by our pool as a summer, and I'm writing down things that I might say. And so I don't trust myself to, in the spur of the moment with the excitement, just ad lib a line. So I write it down and then read it enough times that I've got it in memory, but it's there if I lose my train of thought. But I don't want it to sound like I'm reading it.
Yes.
But I had it, and I told our TV producer, I said, "Now, when it happens, just give me about 6 seconds to say something else, and then I'll be quiet, and you can get all the TV pictures you want of celebrations and things like that." So when he scored, I said, "Wayne Gretzky, the great one, has become the greatest of them all.
I remember that.
He's the all-time leading scorer in the history of the National Hockey League." And so it was nothing really dramatic, but it was something I have heard on tape. Every time they show that clip that he becomes the greatest scorer, they play through that comment that I made at the end. And then another one was about 4 years later. He needed a goal to become the greatest goal scorer in the history of the game with his 802nd goal. And then I thought, now I got to come up with something else to say. So he scored that against Vancouver.
Yeah.
And Kirk McLean was the goaltender, way out of position. And the puck comes over to Gretzky again on the left side. And the goaltender's not even in the picture. So Wayne scores an easy goal there and becomes the all-time leading goal scorer.
Yeah.
And then after that, I just said Wayne Gretzky's NHL record book is now complete. He's the all-time leader in assists, in points, and now, with his 802nd goal, the all-time leading goal scorer in the history of the game. So those two really stand out in my memory and in my career.
That's awesome. Yes, they were great memories. I remember watching them on TV. I want to ask you if any advice for kids who want to be a sports announcer out there.
Yeah, I think it's a great time for kids to do that, because when I started out, if you wanted to get a tape of yourself doing anything, you had to go to a TV station and pay to have them tape you doing a sports show or something, and probably you didn't have a chance to do play-by-play with a camera. But now you can get a video camera, portable video camera with good quality, and set it up in your house and sit there like you're doing a sports show and look at the camera, and you can take a tape recorder and a microphone, go to a Little League baseball game, a youth hockey game, anything, and sit in the crowd and do the play-by-play. And that's the way you're going to get better. You can't read a book and learn how to do it. You've got to do it. You've got to get better every time you do a game. You're going to add a little bit more to your description of what's going on. And really, it's just describing what you're seeing and knowing how to describe it. And I'm amazed a lot of people can't look at something and describe what they're seeing. So the kids today have that opportunity, if they're really interested in getting into broadcasting, get started that way. And I always say, go to a college and get some major in radio and TV, and go to a college that has a good campus radio station and see if they do the broadcasts of the team's athletic events, and do they allow students to do the play-by-play? Because you don't want a professor doing the play-by-play, and you don't get to do it.
Yeah.
You want to go where, yes, students get to do the play-by-play. That's what I did at the University of Iowa. I worked for WSUI at the time, a 5,000 watt station, and we did all the students did all the play-by-play, and so I got some valuable experience that way. And like I say, you've got to do it. You've got to. You could pick up the morning paper if people still get a morning paper. I do, but get a morning paper and read the box scores, read the results of the games, just like you're doing a radio sports show, and you record it. And as somebody says, Chick Hearn said, have somebody critique what you did. Not your mom and dad, because they'll say you're the greatest announcer they ever heard. But you get somebody who is a friend and take criticism the way it's meant. It's meant to make you a better announcer. So don't get upset because somebody said, hey, you haven't told the score in 5 minutes. I got to know the score. So that's gonna help you in becoming an announcer. Take constructive criticism that helps you improve every time you do it, and I think that's what you can do, and a lot of them are very good at doing their high school football or go to a high school football game, sit in the stands and do the football game. And I don't care if you call everybody Smith. You don't need to know for that. You don't need to know everybody's name. Yeah. What you need to know is the flow of the game. Get used to the flow of the game, and don't let the game decide how fast or how you talk. You decide, what you describe. You don't have to describe every little detail, some that doesn't have any meaning in the game. But you decide that, and then just say everybody's named Smith, and you describe what's going on. Of course, when you get a job, then you got to come up with the right name and everything. But for training purposes, you call everybody by the same name, and you don't have to look down. Oh, I don't know who this is, Smith or Jones, or just same name for everybody. Just get used to doing the game and listen to it. And I think you can be successful that way.
This is great advice. This is golden advice. Gold, what you just said. Thank you for that. If you were commissioner of the NHL, what rules would you change or add?
Well, I'll tell you what I really dislike seeing is, and you know this as well as I do, or even better than I do, the checking from behind into the boards. I mean, that is a dirty, dangerous play. Yes. Really dangerous, and somebody is going to get severely injured. That they have been severely injured and paralyzed, and they've gone so far in youth hockey. I think in Canada, on the back of the jersey, they put a stop sign. Yeah. So the player coming in, if you see the numbers, you stop. You don't check them into the boards. And I think what the league has to do, and of course what happens if you're the commissioner, you got to go through the Players Association to approve a lot of this stuff now. And I would say put more strict punishment in those types of checks. Yeah. Fining a player these days is a joke. They're making so much money that doesn't matter to them. And I know in the heat of the game, you don't stop to think about that. But if you see the numbers on a player's back, you can take him out of the play without slamming him into the boards. Yeah. You can, or without taking a penalty. You just kind of get in the way and hold him up a little bit, but it's not a flagrant foul. But put more strength into suspensions and fines for that type of play. I think too lenient with some of that right now. Yeah. So, and really crack down on that, even if it means you're gone for half a season or a whole season.
Wow.
You know.
Yeah, they would stop it right away for sure.
Yeah, I think, and I say the emotions of the game, and you know this,
Yes.
and the heat of the game and the heat of the battle. Sometimes the player forgets about all that other stuff.
Yes.
He's so intent on revenge, and but they've got to do something more to get that out of the game.
Yes.
I also think sometimes now the game is too fast for two referees. I think there are things that get not called because referees just can't keep up with the pace of the game and see everything.
True.
So there's been talk. Maybe you have a off ice referee sitting at a higher level, looking down on the play, and get a better angle on a lot of the plays.
Yes, that's a good idea.
So you don't have too many people on the ice. You know, you don't want to add another official.
No.
But if you add an official, he'd be off the ice, not in the player's way, but have a much better view of the game and be able to call penalties. So,
Bob, I want to thank you so much. It was an honor to talk to you and taking the time to talk to me and doing the interview. I want to thank you for all the joy you've brought into people's homes over the years, all over the world. You're the best in the business. You're the best hockey announcer ever and the best in the sports announcer ever.
Well, I'm not sure about the last comments there, but there are a lot of good announcers, and I just had ambition to do that. I fell in love with hockey, the opening face-off of the first game I ever did, and I think the key is do the game at a pace where the listener, especially on radio, can follow the game. You can talk so fast. If the guy at home can't understand what you said, you're defeating the purpose.
Yes.
And do the pace, do the game at your pace, and just let everybody know or feel that they can see exactly what's happening, even if it's a radio broadcast.
Yes.
They know where the puck is at all times, and I just enjoyed doing that. I enjoyed the whole atmosphere around the games, and very lucky to have been able to do it professionally in the NHL for 44 years. So it was my pleasure, and I thank you for being a viewer and listener, and with all you're doing with youngsters now and teaching them the right way to play and the right way to be successful.
Thank you, Bob. Thank you. Means a lot. And
Okay.
Thank you. You got it. Great talking to you. We'll see you soon.
Okay,
Right.
Jack.
Thank
Nice
you.
to be with you.
Nice to be with you. Thank you. Bye-bye.